I'm here for Virgin Radio with Kyle Falconer, guitarist, songwriter and singer in The View. Kyle, thank you for coming in.
Cheers, man.
How you feeling?
Yeah, I've been on tour for like 10 days doing promotion, so I've been doing like 6-7 shows a day.
Oof.
And my throat's really struggling today, so I'm just like, well, I actually had a day off yesterday, and I went and had I went to the driving range and just like hot balls for about 5 hours, and my whole body's in agony. So I'm not having a good time at the minute.
Well, Kyle, you're best known for your work in The View. It's been a crazy journey from some lads from Dundee it was quite a meteoric rise from playing those school talent shows. What was that like?
Well, I think like the only reason we got in the band is because we wanted to. The Irish dancers in the talent show used to win every year, and they were getting 50 quid. And it was at a time where we were sort of into the beer, and we were like thinking how many beers we could buy off of 50 quid. So it's just getting a band. So we started a band, and we beat them. And I remember all the mums and dads were raging because they pay so much for these girls Irish dancing, and they win it every year. So I was like, no, we're going to beat them. But then it was when we were in a cover band for like a year, and then we stopped it, and we all left school. And then after that, I was like, my mate's got a pub called the Bayview. My cousin's got a pub called the Bayview. He said, let's get the band back together. I've written some songs, so went back, and then we had 5 songs, and the next minute we got a phone call, come down to London. And we signed to James Endicott, and it was all pretty rapid from there, man.
And did you just seize any and all opportunities with both hands?
At the time, it was. I think there was a big thing about when we started, because it was a big party that we just took everywhere with. So we'd take like a bus of like 80 of our pals, and they'd all come down. So whatever gig we were, whatever place we played, people were like hearing about it and going, "Oh, I want them View people there because it makes your venue look cool." Back in the day, so we would just bring a busload of folk in these small venues. And then the word spread. And I think we actually gave a CD to Pete Doherty at the side of his bus, and he would listen to it and just like says, yeah, you can play tonight. And then he gave the CD to James Endicott, and then we got a phone call to come to London. So it was all pretty quick.
Where was that, Pete Doherty's bus parked?
It was in Dundee.
It was in Dundee?
Yeah.
And you just gave him the CD and then...
Yeah, we were like, oh, and then he was like, I'm on the bus for a minute. He played it and went, oh, I love this. He said, this is class, can I give this to one of my friends? I like it.
It's a great story.
Yeah.
You guys were so young when it all kicked off. Were you able to take it all in?
Do you know what, we were just cocky as anything, we just didn't care, and we thought like, we just read the wave. It was funny because the gig was what got on the way of everything, so travelling the world, going to like Japan and America and everything, it was like, we just thought, I think we felt quite deserving of it, because there was a lot of bands out there that were like, we were more into the partying, but I always think, if I didn't do so much partying, we could have been more successful. But I mean, we're still smashing it, man. I just finished a tour with The View at Christmas time there, and it still like feels exactly the same as it did when we were kids. You know what I mean? So sometimes it's about, oh no, kind of want to wait. I've got 3 kids myself and 1 on the way, so it's quite weird going from like with family life in Spain, dropping the kids off, then going straight back to being in The View. It's like, sometimes it's like, oh, it's too crazy. You know what I mean?
Do you still get blown away by the response when you play a View gig?
Yeah, I mean, I was quite nerve-wracking because we hadn't played in so long. I mean, when The View got back together, we were like, I was about, is anybody going to come? But we're still selling out over shows, and it's good. But there is a lot of hype to live up to, because people want you to be that crazy guy on the stage, and sometimes I don't want to be that crazy guy. You know, and it's like the adrenaline I get from playing with The View. It's like even when everyone's like chanting The View on fire, it's like get this big rush, and it's like I just go off my head. You know what I mean?
And you've had sort of well-documented issues with, addiction and stuff. Was that because you were so young, it was hard to avoid the pitfalls of the industry?
Well, at the time, I mean, we were we were pals with the Libertines and like Oasis, and all these bands were doing it, and we were kids, and we were like, we want to outdo them. You know what I mean? So you just got into it, and it was like moving to London and stuff. It was just a done thing. And then maybe in about 2013, it was uncool to do drugs and drink. And it was like, we were the idiots for still doing it, you know what I mean? But it was hard not to live up to it, because everyone's coming to see you do that. But then it becomes more of your life rather than the music, you know what I mean? And it's like, but yeah, I've sorted all that. Anybody who's got an issue, I just say have kids and I'll sort them out, you know what I mean?
And was it the kids that motivated you to sort of, sort this out?
Yeah, I mean, I went to rehab when I met my partner, my wife now, and we got pregnant while I was in rehab. By this time I was in for like 5 months. I was doing a lot of writing and soul searching, and sometimes you don't want to like listen to anybody, you just like do your own thing. But this time I was like, I had motivation because I had a baby coming, so I went back, got myself a mortgage for the first time in my life and all that. Like, I couldn't do any of that because I was just wasted for years, and I was just like put everything at the back of my head. I was just like, just get me on tour, and it was just album tour, and in between that I always toured with Mark Ronson as well. So if I wasn't touring with The View, I was touring with Mark Ronson, and it was just constant, like just a big circle of just mad emotions. And even being in the band with Ronson, you're touring with like Stuart Zender, Alex Greenwald, all these guys that have been heroes for my life, but they're like, everyone's just mad ADHDers. It's just like, so it was like, oh, I fit in here, but it wasn't very good for me, you know what I mean?
And The View now, do you get the same buzz? You know, when you're performing on stage now, is it the same buzz that you got when you were touring with Mark Ronson in those early days of The View?
Yeah, because it's something, and do you know what, the band's better now. We never used to, as I was saying, we never used to care about the gig. That was the last thing. It was like, what we're going to do today, what pub are we going to, let's see if we can get some stuff. And then when we got back together after years, we were like, we've got a new drummer, and we were like, wow, we're actually a good band if we put our heads together and don't go for like 20 Guinness before the show. You know what I mean? It's like, this is good. And I felt, yes, I'm starting to enjoy this. But back in the day, it was like, oh, dread, I'm going to play dread. And now it's like, oh yes, this is going to be a great show.
And what are you most proud of being part of The View? You know, what are the career highlights? You've had UK #1 album, you know, you Mercury Prize nomination, you toured Mark Ronson, you're on a Mark Ronson album.
I think it was just when my parents were alive, when my mum died when I was on about the third album. But I remember like just my mum used to come home from the bingo and whatever, and all her pals would like give her all these cutouts, and my mum was so proud, so that was a good thing. And I think like just headlining Tina Park while my mum was still alive and stuff, and that was good to see that, because at the time, and headlining Glastonbury and everything, it was like they were, but I look back on them and I go, wow, I was absolutely twatted at that gig. And I was like, why nowadays if I was headlining Glastonbury, I'd be like running every day and just like keeping my stuff together, you know what I mean? But it's so funny, but we felt so like, oh, this is what we do, this is our job. And even labels back then were different. Everyone was different. Producers were different. We're produced by Owen Morris, who'd done all the Oasis stuff, and yet everyone was off their heads. All the labels were off their head, so you couldn't get away from it. It was just like everyone was just nuts. So it would just be, but I'm going on tangents. But that, I just headlining all them things, Tina Park and everything. That was great because that's where we wanted to get, because we went from playing the T-Break stage, which was like our biggest achievement in the world. And then it went crazy that year, and the next year we're headlining Tina Park, so it was pretty cool, man. But even things like when we were kids, like 18 and stuff, I woke up in the Royal Albert Hall, and I was like, oh, and I heard Half the World Away, and it was Noel and Paul Weller sitting on stage playing that, and I was like, oh, what am I doing here? This is like, they were my heroes. So it was like, that was so cool. So I think like, just wee things like that are not like big achievements, but for me they were highlights, because it was just like sitting watching them soundcheck. It was just a game changer.
Was it just one sort of blur that time in your life?
Yeah.
Maybe just because you were touring so often and you were waking up in different cities. Was it hard to sort of let it sink in?
Well, it was a bit, as I was saying, we were just so used to it, and like it was just even in Groundhog Day. Sometimes I would be like, what album am I on? And it'd be like playing the same venues every year, and even in Europe or Australia, we're just going back and playing the same venues, and it's like, what year is it? And it was all a bit jumbled up. And we've played like all the festivals so many times. You're like, sometimes just like forget. You're like, what time is like Tina Park? I think we've like played that the most times ever. Played Glastonbury, all these Reading and Leeds a million times, and you're just like, you just look down at your feet like, what year is this? Like, what am I wearing? I'm in the short stage. I'm in the jeans phase. What shirt have I got on? It's like mental.
That's crazy. And you mentioned a few things there. Hearing Noel Gallagher play Half the World Away with Paul Weller, you've met a few of your heroes then in your time. Yeah,
I mean, so for years ago, I was massive. Oh, I still am a massive Oasis fan, but I mean, even my daughters, like, because I was in Thailand with Liam and Debbie, and my daughter was only wee, and I was like, we're in LG's house. This is a big deal. She was only 9 months. But even my missus was like, yeah, you could have a party with Liam today. I'll babysit the kid. I was like, come on, it's not very often this happens. And then, but now Wild, my eldest daughter's like, she's just mad on Oasis. She's always got her. She's 8. She's maybe 8. But I got her a vinyl today. I'm going to get it signed. And she's like, I'm going to, because we've got a new house. So she's like, I want to put it above my bed. But I mean, yeah, we've played with them loads. One of the crazy things was we were second from headline at Benicassim, and they were on last. So that was like us saying, oh, that was how we sported. We're basically sporting Oasis, but we weren't. But that was great, just being at side stage for that. But I remember back in the day, like even getting a pass for Oasis gig. I think it was in Liverpool. We went to see them when they were doing, is it Dig Out Your Soul, that album? When they were doing that, and I remember just going, wait a minute, these passes mean we can get backstage at Oasis. And it was just like we're like sort of off of Wayne's World, like we're not worthy, and just like going back, and it was like that was surreal. And just like partying with Oasis, it was like brilliant. But yeah,
They were a big reason you started playing in a band.
yeah, I think everyone's reason for, because everyone's Beatles fans, but you kind of get into it. Everyone gets into Oasis first because you feel more relatable to them, because I know they're from a house in the scheme. That's what we're like, and it's funny because you think Liam's going to be this. Everyone's like quite intimidated by him, but he's like the nicest guy in the world, and he's not like the way it's portrayed. You know what I mean? He's just like, it's always been amazing. But yeah, Noel's a bit more scary. You know what I mean? But Liam's like, yes, he's one of the lads. You know what I mean? But you'd think it would be the other way about. But yeah, they're both legends. I remember the first time we met Noel. I remember we were in Metropolis in London. We were mastering with EP, and my manager came in, and he wasn't an Oasis fan, but he knew we were massive, and he went, Noel Gallagher's at the Bardens, and I was like, no way. So I sprinted down, and I just looked, and he was there. I was like, oh no, what was it? I remember going in, and it's like, I just cracked a beer. I was like, it was like 9 in the morning, and we were like, he was like, you drinking beer at this time? You absolutely mental. And I was like, oh, do you know, I want a beer, Mr. Gallagher. I said, man, list of our tunes, but everyone. And I remember just coming through the door when Noel behind us, and the boys were like, what the? They're freaking out, and we were all just like, whoa, he's listening to our tunes. And he was like a hero, you know what I mean? Even like, I met Paul McCartney. I was playing a gig with Mark Ronson in London, and then it was like, I was such a big Beatles fan as well, but it wasn't even like when I first met Liam. It was a bigger deal than meeting Paul McCartney. It was like whoa, but I got to know him over the years, and he's just one of us. But I think when I met McCartney, it was like somebody rang a bell and went, everyone stand, Mr. McCartney's coming into the room. And I was like, whoa, and he's like, he had a baby blue suit on with like Reebok Classics, and it was just mental. I was like, that was nuts. But even then, it was like, I remember like Liam going, oh yeah, McCartney's just because he's a Lennon fan more, so I think he doesn't really get the whole massive on wings and all that stuff, and I like the softer side of McCartney. But yeah, man, of course.
And you saw Oasis perform at T in the Park back in the day when you were a teenager.
Yeah.
Was that life-changing, that moment?
Oh yeah, it was mental. That was probably like one of my first. I'd been to see Ocean Colour Scene in the Caird Hall in Dundee. I think that was maybe my second gig. I was like 13, 14. And me and my guitarist from The View both got to go. Well, his auntie took me, but we were kind of let off the leash, so we were having a couple of beers in there. It was mental. But yeah, right at the front of that was insane. Primal came on before them as well. It was just what a day. It was great, man.
And then you went on to headline it a few years later.
Yeah,
It's great. And Owen Morris, who produced Definitely Maybe and What's the Story for Oasis, produced your first 2 albums.
Yeah.
What was that like? And how did it come about, actually?
So James Endicott, who he signed like Libertines and Strokes and all this, he was our guy, and he was like, he's like, I've got this guy coming who done Oasis, and we knew, I know who I found well who Owen Morris is. But he was dead. He was quite. He's always kind of slagging when making jokes, but I think the pop Owen was, but James Endicott. It was like, I want you just to go and record the album. I was like, but we've only got like 11 songs. He went, yeah, but just do it. And I think we never really knew we were going in to record an album. We were just like, it was basically every day we were just listening to all the Oasis outtakes that he had in it. We just sitting listening, just blown away by the stories. And he'd go, right, I can't just keep telling you all the Oasis stories. You got to do some work. But we basically, the first record, we went to like a cowshed in the middle of Scarborough, and we just took all our own equipment, and it was basically a live recording. That's what we're trying to capture, and we're like, who better to do it? But that was some crazy times, and I think by the time we'd done the second album with him, we were like gone. Stuff had went to our head, and we were just like, we didn't start recording until like 3 weeks into the session. The label came and we're like, you just need to stop partying. And you've got nothing done yet. And it was when we'd be coming, we'd be like, hey, go, come on, let's record the tune quick. They'd be like coming the back door and that to catch you out and see what we're up to.
You've probably had many nights with Liam and Noel since. Always a good laugh, always good fun.
Yeah, man, absolutely brilliant. I've had some mad nights with Liam, man. Just amazing. It's just when you love the bands like that so much, it's hard not to just keep talking about them. You know what I mean? Like, do you mind if every time I've got a guitar and he's like, no, play me some of yours. I'm like, oh, can I just play Cast No Shadow? And he's like, no, I'm not playing any of that. And I was like, come on. So yeah, it's really hard not to be a head nipper. But yeah.
What are they like at a party?
Not really partied loads with Noel. I just see him at like festivals and that. I've partied many a times with him. He's just one of the lads. And he's still doing it. But I think he's maybe chilled it a wee bit, but he's like the life of the party, man.
So when you went on tour with him, was it just a big travelling circus?
There was a couple of nights where we would get right on it, and then it would be like, then the next night it'd be like, no, I'm not coming out the night. So I had Tonto the night before. So yeah, it's just the same as Alma, man. Just a sing song and a drink, you know what I mean? Guitar and a drink.
And you played arenas with Liam last year on his the 30th anniversary of the Definitely Maybe album.
Yeah.
What was that like, getting to open the stage?
It was really cool. It was as again, like I went on tour with him when he done the thingy, his first solo album. That was great. But to be able to do it with a view, it was really cool. But I think after it, we were up the stairs, and I can't remember. It was like there was a few people, but I was in a box, and my missus knew that I was going to be on one because I was watching Oasis, and it was like, she said, I think you forgot you had kids, because the kids were with me on tour. She was like, I think you forgot you had kids at one point. I was definitely maybe live. I was like, obviously it was pure, I was going to get a wee bit away with it, you know what I mean? And she was like, no, you were like really gone, you were crying, and everyone was like looking at you, and I was like, oh, just mental, it's go off my head with Oasis, man.
And any chance of being involved in the upcoming tour?
No, I thought we were going to get it. I was like, McGee, our manager, he was like, oh, you're in a good chance, but he must have knew Cast were getting it, because he works for them as well. I think it was like, in the way they were saying it is because what they wanted to do Cast, because it was like, that was when All Change was out, and it was released the same year, and it was like, or around the same time, so it suited them more. I was like, I've never even got one show, not even one. I was so convinced I was going to at least get one.
Not one of the Murrayfield shows, no?
Nah, got it.
Nah. And will you be going seeing them anyway?
Yes, I will, yeah. Hopefully we're going to go to the opening night. The opening night, we're going to take the kids, just to try and keep us on a level. And Wembley, hopefully we've got that.
And why do you think Oasis's music endures, and why do you think they've got such a hold on people even to this day, 30 years later, after their first album?
Because I think people connect to it, the lyrics, it's just the looks, the whole aesthetic, but you couldn't get away from them songs when you're younger, but it's like, they're just albums just got better. A lot of people are like, don't believe the truth and all that, and they're the only band that I could put on and not get bored. And I do quite a lot of running, and every time I go out, I'm like, I can't keep listening to Oasis, I'm going to listen to someone else, but then that's like, stops me thinking as much, because it's like my comfort blanket, all them Oasis tunes, I just love them. But I think it was like, everyone always went on about, well, Noel's, like you speak to an actual, a good guitarist or whatever, like a muso, nobody will be going on about like the chords and that, but they're so simple, and it's like he invented a whole thing like that sort of sus E minor thing. That's his thing, and it's still my go-to chord when I'm going to write something. You know what I mean? It's like everyone goes out about Wonder. It's not like a Wonderwall. It's like you try writing Wonderwall. It's one of the greatest songs in the world. It's got like the best lyrics. It's got like the best vocal take of all time ever, and it's like just unbelievable. You know what I mean? People are like, I'm not going to write a Wonderwall. It's like you'll never be able to write a Wonderwall. You know what I mean?
So it just catches people.
Yeah,
it looks great, it sounds great, and it's just got a hold on you.
Right.
Do you think from being a working class background as well, does that mean that they're more universally loved by sort of like everyone that's come from a more modest background?
Well, that's what I was saying earlier. I think musicians are always like, that's where, if somebody says to me they don't like Oasis, I won't speak to them. It's pretty bad, but then it's like they're going out their way to do it because everyone else likes them. I'm like, but that's you just being like a prude, like, just doing it for the sake of it, just to stick it to the man or to go against the grain. But if everyone likes it, there's a reason for that. They're like, I just don't like it. I think it's just too simple, and you've never really listened to it. And I've turned a few people. There's a couple of people when I was in LA and that, like, oh no, Oasis are not my thing. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to write with you then. And they'd be like, I'll just go and listen to a couple of albums, and then we'll have a conversation. Like, dude, I'm so sorry, man. I never really heard them like that. I'm sorry. They're total shit. Now can we write some stuff? All right, let's do it, man.
And just quickly, a few questions about Oasis before we go back to sort of your life. Favourite Oasis song?
Probably Cast No Shadow.
And your favourite album?
What's the Story is probably my favourite album from any band. Let's sort of want to go.
And when you go see them live, what is the song you'd most like them to play?
It would just be good seeing them doing What's the Story. Just like seeing them both do it. 'Cause it's funny when Noel does new versions of them, but I wonder, I've like sort of not new versions, but he sings them different in that when he's doing them. And I've seen Noel play on his own loads, but I wonder if it's going, because Liam sort of, when he's playing on his own, sounds like just Oasis. But I wonder if Noel's going to try and make it his way, or they're just going to be Oasis. I don't know. It's just like, it'll be good.
Going back to your life, you just released your latest solo album, The One I Love the Most. It features favourites of The View and from your solo career. What made you want to rework those songs for this album?
Well, we've been building a studio for a couple of years in Spain, and it's finally done. So I was sitting there, and I've always had this idea, and we've started a publishing company, and we've got our own label. So this was like, we're going to be our first test to see how we got on with it. And we've been on the road for like 10 days, but I think just because it was all the girls' names, and in my head it was like, oh, I'm going to make them all, maybe going to turn them into hip hop tracks and everything. But once I got in, I was like, I don't even know the songs. It wasn't like some of them songs have never been played live, so like having to go through them all, I was like, this is giving myself too much work, so I'm just going to make them acoustic. But it was good revisiting them. There were songs that I never really, that I didn't really know what I was writing about. And so when I was going back to them, I was like, oh, that makes sense now. But at the time, I just thought I was spraffing. So,
well, these songs, as you said, are women's names. Are these women that have influenced you or guided you in some way? Some about your wife and your mum?
Well, Laura has, that's my wife. But like a song like Claudia, that's about my dog that didn't like me. She liked everyone in the family, but she wouldn't come near me. So that's like, but some of them are just made up. Some of them are really dark. Some of them are, they're all just different. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And Laura, mother of your children, now your wife. Mm-hmm. You write about her. Obviously, Laura, the song on the album.
Well.
Sorry, go on.
Well, I tried to, when I was in one of my rehabs, I was like, she was like, you've never really written a love song for me, and I was trying to do it, and I was like, I can't really write a love song, so none of them are really love songs. So when I wrote Laura, it was a bit like, there was a place, Lana, that we were in, and it was rehab in Thailand, and I was like, come on, a level makes I kind of get out. And then funnily enough, she was like, oh, there's still no love songs for me, but we've written a musical since then, and that's one of them songs. And that's called No Love Songs, because she kept going, there's still not a love song for me, what's going on? And I'm like, none of them are love songs, I've never written a love song. Mm-hmm. And she was like, well, it sounds like it. And I was like, but it's still not a love song if you listen to the lyrics.
Well, you mentioned the musical, you collaborated on that. I think she wrote the words, am I right? And you wrote some of the music. Mm-hmm. How did that come about? Because
we were trying to, as I was saying, when I moved over to LA with my kids and us and the kids, and I was writing with other people, trying to because I didn't want to keep going on tour because I've got kids and it's like hard to be away from them. So I was trying to write for other people, but then I had this big bunch of songs, and then Laura was like, "You're basically writing about," because she was going through postnatal all the time, and it was like, she was like, "You're basically writing about our life, but writing them for other people." And she was like, "Why don't you just collectively do an album?" And then she was just laughing, "No love songs for Laura," and that's why we called it that. And it was like, I was like, "I'm going to call the album that," and she was like, "No." And I was like, "Well, you started it, man." But that's so when I was like, because we tried to write another musical with one of the songs called "Don't Call Me Baby," which is one of the songs on the album. But I was like, it's too dark to write a musical. It was this really dark subject matter. So I was like, why don't we just write it about our life? It's a pretty cool story. And then she was like, right, okay. But then I was just kept on asking her, come on, write. And she was like, because she was going to quite dark places. She was like, I don't want to go there. And I was like, well, we need to do it. And then I met this director in Dundee, and he was straight away was like, I love this. It's great. We could do something with it. And it's all just starts in America in a few weeks, and then it's in Australia as well at the same time. So it's got two separate casts.
And will you be going out to see it in America and Australia?
We're going to America in June, yeah. And we're all going. We're taking the nanny and that. We're going out for a couple of weeks to New York. And then I think it's doing a US tour after that, and then but it starts in Australia. All the actors have already went over, and that. Yeah, it's good.
Wow. Okay, well, thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, it's been great chatting to you.
Cheers, mate.
And yeah, thank you for coming on Virgin Radio.
Virgin Radio.